I think I'll kick off this little seminar, and I'll just run through some of the things that I'm going to be talking about tonight. Really, these are just my ideas. Sorry, you're getting a lot of flare off my glasses there. If I don't wear the glasses, I can't see anything. I'll take them off for a while. Really, these are just my ideas about mountain writing and about writing about the outdoors that I've sort of evolved over the years. They're not hard and fast principles by any means. I think some of them definitely work, and I think some of them maybe work. If you're trying to get into writing about the outdoors, if it's something you want to start doing, then I think some of the ideas that I could probably sort of give you will help you. I can also tell some of the things not to do, which is also equally useful. I'm going to start out by talking about the difference between non-fiction and fiction writing, and how I think the two overlap, which I think gives you a lot of freedom in the sort of outdoor writing that you've got. I'm also going to talk about the structure of the story, how you put together that story so that it tells the tale that you want it to tell in a way that will engage with the reader. So I'm going to talk about a few structural things which I think are really important to know, and have certainly helped me. You can ignore all and everything of that I'm saying. In fact, it's probably a good idea to take it on board and decide what you want to use and what you don't want to use. I'm also going to talk about how to reveal the landscape and what I think works in that. And really, I think one of the most important things is to be able to sort of draw your audience in to being part of that journey and to enjoying that landscape. Because that's really what they want to do. And I'll just try and find what else I've written on my notes. Well, they don't do this on telly, do they? Oh yeah, okay. I'm going to talk about other ways that you can develop your writing. Writing isn't. Someone said that writing is not a destination; it's a journey, and that's certainly true because I haven't got there yet. It seems to be a long, long way. So I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about working with other people as well. How you can use the people around you to help you, and how not to use some people. Okay, so I think I've outlined it enough. Let's start out by talking about the difference or the similarities, really, in a way, between non-fiction and fiction. People seem to think, or there's a very sharp boundary between what is non-fiction and what is fiction. And that's certainly true if you're writing a history or if you're writing a guidebook. But I don't think it's true if you're writing the kind of travelogue that I write. That doesn't mean I make everything up. What that means is that it's really a journey in imagination. And when you're writing about a hill, oh god, your live stream seems prompted to close the application. Okay, all right, it's telling me so. I don't know if you guys can see me still. Any comments? Okay, no one's saying they can't see me as far as I can see. Okay, I think we're still working, I think. When you walk through a landscape, or when you decide what you're looking at, and the things that you're going to tell your readers about, which is really your story, you edit that, and that is a creative process in itself. And the sort of journey that you take through a landscape will be different from the kind of journey that I take. You'll see different things, you'll notice different things, and that's really the creative part of what you do. So you're actually not writing an entirely factual story at all. You're writing about the journey that your imagination takes, and that isn't really fiction. But it is an imaginative thing, and it is the way what you choose to talk about and what you choose not to talk about colours that story. It's also the case that I think you should feel fairly free in any story, really, to adapt some of the events. If they don't, most storytellers, and certainly I do at times, I think everybody does who writes books about their adventures. Sometimes I've had to combine characters, pull them together to tell the story that I want to tell. If I had written, when I wrote The Last Hill Walker, my first book, if I'd written that entirely in the sequence that it happened. I'd had to have introduced probably another 50 or 60 characters, different people, different places, different events. And that would have made the story pretty tedious and the book about 3 times longer than it is already. And God knows you wouldn't want that. So I've had to combine in that book some of the characters to get the story told. You often find when people adapt a film to a book, and they make film of it, people say they altered the story, and probably they did, because obviously, they're telling a story of a book in 90 minutes, so you've got to kind of adapt that. Okay, so the next thing I think it's important to know about is, so I've hinted a bit about what you're writing. You're writing about your experience. The bad news for everybody who writes about the outdoors, and it doesn't have to be mountains, but in my case it's been mountains, is that mountains are actually quite boring. Mountains are great big lumps of rock. They don't say anything and they don't do much, they just sit there. The story actually is about our relationship with mountains. We tend to, throughout history, man has imbued mountains with spirits and with sacred aspects, with moods and with monsters and demons. Years and years ago, well, not that long ago, I suppose, only a few hundred years ago now, people did not go into the mountains. They were sort of dangerous in places where demons lived. So what's happened over the last few hundred years is that we have developed a relationship with mountains, and it's really the challenges that they provide us as human beings with that are the interesting things to write about. It's the things that it says about us, about how we face up to danger, about how we find inspiration, which is really where the story lies. Earlier today, I did an interview with Paul Pritchard about his book, which is a great book I really recommend. It's called The Mountain Path, he says, glancing at the book to make sure. Now that's really about, Paul suffered very, very severe injuries on a climb in Tasmania, and his journey has been his relationship with the mountains and how that's made him feel. So that's the story. So it is our relationship, how we respond to any environment, actually, that you're actually writing about. You don't think you are at first. You think you're talking about the hills, but it's not. It's how I feel about walking into a bothy. It's how I feel about sitting beside a stream. It's what that says about me. So it's important. So what I'm trying to say in that paragraph, which you may be struggling to ascertain, is I'm really trying to say, talk about how you and the people and the people you're with, or the community in general, has reacted to that place. That is the story. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the kind of structure that we're very fortunate. I'm largely talking about writing about mountaineering and walking up hills and going to bothies and things like that. I did say not long ago to my publisher, I think I've said just about everything it's possible to say about walking into a bothy. Now I've discovered there's quite a lot more I can say. But one of the things about, I'm going to talk about mountaineering because that's really what I'm used to writing about. But actually this applies to a lot of things. If you think about a mountain, an attempt to climb a mountain, it's actually a gift to any storyteller. And the reason for that is that it is a perfect tale. It is imbued, if you're climbing a mountain, it's imbued with tension. And if you think about, one of the big questions that any writer will ask in any story for his characters is, what's at stake? What do these people win or lose in this situation? And if someone can lose their life, then that's the biggest thing that you can possibly have at stake. If you're just going to lose a pair of slippers, no one really cares. But if you're pitted against your life then that's a great story itself. And the good thing about any hill journey, even if you just happen to be walking in the Brecon Beacons or something, is that the outcome is uncertain. You don't know what you're going to find. You don't know where you're going to go. If you're climbing an unclimbed Himalayan peak or something really serious like that, then obviously the outcome is always uncertain. You've no idea. That's a gift for a storyteller. The other side of things, and I think this is important at any level of story, no matter what you're writing about. Should maybe slow down a bit. Is that there are things to discover. And this is actually one of the great things that we have in mountain writing is that you can turn a corner and find an incredible view. You can turn a corner and find a vast wall of rock and ice that you didn't expect. You can suddenly find yourself in difficulty, or if you take it right down, if you just happen to be someone bumbling through on a nice little walk in the Cotswolds, you could come across a view or an insect or something else that takes your fancy. And so there are things to discover. So if you think about it, one of the best ways, if I was talking to Keith Fossett, who writes about what I think the Americans call through hiking, which we always just call long distance walking. And basically, he's walked things like the Pacific Crest Trail and other very long and arduous walks. And obviously, the structure for his story, for his book, is in many ways given. You start there and you walk to there. So and that helps in structuring the book. But it doesn't do, and I think it would be fatal if you follow it simply day by day, because that becomes tedious. If you're writing, I suppose one of the things I should say, and I didn't think about beforehand, but whenever I'm writing anything, I'm thinking about the audience. I'm thinking about what is it that they're going to get out of this particular journey, this particular tale. So it's important to have your audience in mind. And I tend to write as though I'm imagining myself sitting at a bothy fire telling this tale to somebody who's sitting there. It's important to realise, I think, that when you're writing anything, don't try and write for 1,000 people. Just write for one. And in many ways, write for yourself. And that will give you the kind of tone that you're trying to get. I hope that makes some sort of sense. So the journey is the story. But you are, and make no mistake, you are, even if you're writing non-fiction, you are a storyteller. You are a storyteller just as a storyteller, someone who tells a fantasy tale about dragons and knights. Your dragons and knights are mountains and ravines. There is no difference, in my opinion. You have to still engage your audience and try and engage their imagination. Okay, so that's using the journey, the structure of the journey. A mountain, you start at the bottom, you climb to the top, and with a bit of luck, you get down. So that's using that overall structure. But you don't have to do it in that order. And what are the things that I would always say, and a piece of something I always try and do, I would always say never start at the beginning. You have to hook the reader in. Your reader's attention span, your audience's attention span is relatively short, to be honest. And you have to hook them in straight away. Let me give you an example. If you're writing about a climb or an attempt on Ben Nevis or something like that, for example, don't start by saying something like, "Me and Hugh had always wanted to climb Ben Nevis. One day he said to me, 'Let's just go and do it.' And so we got in the car and drove to Fort William." I don't know about you, but I've already gone. If you say, "Suddenly Hugh's crampons sheared through the ice and I watched in horror as he tumbled away into the mist, you've got me. Because I want to know what happened to Hugh and how that happened. Sorry, my glasses are blinding everybody, including me. Okay, you've got a hook. So you can, if you start, there's no problem with starting in that dramatic moment. It doesn't have to be drama. It could suddenly be a revelation. You got to the top of the mountain, or suddenly you saw an incredible view. I suddenly stared out into the open vistas and realised that this was the place I had always wanted to be. We will just delete that line. But that is the kind of thing that you can do. And it brings your readers in straight away, because they want to know who you are, where you're going. But if you give them that information very slowly, and then you come down the other side, my finger's going off the wrong way, you lose them. You simply lose them, and lose them very quickly. So I would always say, no matter what you're writing, don't start at the beginning. Start at some point. It could be a thing you discovered, a thing you didn't know was there, a surprise encounter. It doesn't have to be drama. It's good if it is, but it doesn't have to be. Someone once said to me, I was at a writing class, and you have to do these exercises, and you have to write the start of a story. And they said to me, "Oh, do you write thrillers?" I said, "Yeah, every book's a thriller," because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hook the audience in. Okay, so you can also, what I should have said is that in the example I quoted where the guy fell off the hill, that creates tension. And tension's really good for engaging your audience and dragging them along. So the things that you'll have done that you want to write about, I'm sure they'll be able to do that. I'm just going to, give me a second, I've just realised I'm going to be talking about the last 3 hours if I'm not careful. Right, any comments? No more comments. Even Jeff's gone home. You're still there, Jeff? Okay. Right. One of the things that we also want to do is to allow our readers to see the landscape that we're in. And I think one of the best ways to do that, I would be careful about using too much description. And it's really handy if you can have a partner with you. Because your partner can say something like, "Gore blimey, look at the size of that hill. And I turned, and there was this massive vista." You're describing the landscape, but you're doing it through dialogue. Dialogue is powerful. Dialogue takes a bit of handling. Okay, it's not the easiest thing to write. But if you have two characters walking through a landscape, one can tell the other. If you watch something like Laurel and Hardy are a good example. Stan Laurel was always asking Oliver, "What's going on?" And Oliver would turn around and say, "I have told you before, we're here to do this." That's a dramatic technique. When Ollie is talking to Stan, he's also telling the audience what's going on. That's a much better way of using what's called exposition. So if you've got exposition, is basically saying, "We did this, we did that, we did that." That's boring. Don't do that. But if you've got characters who can talk about what's happening, even if you have to make that dialogue up, to be honest, it's what they might have said. And I won't talk any more about dialogues. Read somewhere about how to write dialogues. Not easy. But it is a very powerful way, not only of revealing your characters, telling people something about your characters, without having to say it. If a character can say something that says he's afraid, that says he's scared of what's about to happen, that lets the audience know there's some sort of risk here, without you having to say it. And that is a really good way of telling stories. So dialogue is powerful. Okay, that's the point of that little paragraph. I'm moving on, because if I don't, I'll be here for 2 days. If you're talking about a landscape, the important, which most of us are if we're talking about outdoor writing at some level, then landscape, the actual landscape, where you are, is a character in your story. A good example of this is if you read a lot of fantasy writing. If you read fantasy writing, the environment, the world in which these people live, is as much a character as the kings in Game of Thrones or whatever. And it's an important person. If you treat your landscape as a person, and there's a few little tricks. One way to give your landscape a bit of depth, a bit of more feeling to it, is to actually do a little bit of research about where you're writing. Research the history of it. It doesn't have to be a lot. We could be talking about just a few sentences to tell people where you are. For example, I spend a lot of time, or did until fairly recently, on the odd Cornish estate on the west coast, and I discovered that it's a great swath of green oak trees and lakes and a lot of rain, and it looks a very wild and natural landscape. But as a lot of you will know, Scotland is not actually that natural. But the interesting thing about that area is that within the woods, I discovered there are charcoal pits that were used to provide the charcoal to make the cannon that Nelson used at Trafalgar. Now that's unique about that area, and how we build our characters is we give them a history. So you don't have to say much about that, but that gives a history, gives a context. So do a little research. A good author to read, if you want to look at that sort of thing, is to look at Bill Bryson. Bill Bryson, I like Bill Bryson, but if you read his stuff enough, what he does is he works on a fairly formulaic pattern. And what he'll do is he'll go to a place, he's clearly done a bit of research, and he'll talk about the history of the place. Not a lot, just enough to give you the flavour of where you are and the sort of place that it is, and he'll throw that in. He then puts in a bit of humour, and I'm going to talk about that later on. But look at how that's done. The main point of what I'm trying to say is that you don't want your character, your mountains or your hills, just to be a bland area. You want to put them in the context that they're in, and talk about the people who live there, what their past's been, just a little bit, to give it a bit of flavour. Because after all, that's what characters are. Characters are their history. Characters don't just come suddenly out of the blue. They have a past, and that past is important to their present, if that makes any sense at all. Okay, right. Oh yeah, okay. I'm going to talk now. For me, what's been one of the most useful bits of technique, if you like, in terms of writing. A lot of people always say to me, it feels as though I'm there in your books. And that's really important to me. If someone says to me, it feels as though I was there, I think you've done it. That is what outdoor writing is about. It's about drawing people who have never had these experiences into your world and letting them experience it as though they walked through it. That's what outdoor writing, good outdoor writing, in my opinion, in my little head, is that's what I try and do. So how do you do that? Okay, well, I think there are some fairly the technique that I basically use is, what I try and do is rub their noses in it. Okay, and I do that by, here's an example. Okay, a couple of examples. I walk through the stream. This is now not to do it. I walk through the stream and my feet got wet. Okay, fact. I would do it as I emerged from the stream. I felt the cold squelch of water oozing through my socks and between my toes. I was desperate and wet yet again. What have we done? We've taken that experience and we've put it right in the reader's mind. If we look at, so what you want is, if you want them to, you don't say, by the time we got to the summit it was -10. You say, by the time we got to the summit, the side of my face was frozen solid. When I touched it, all I could feel was ice and the sharp crystals scraping against my skin. Okay? What have I tried to do there? With more or less effect, I have tried to take the reader right in to the experience. That's what, in my opinion, that is what readers of outdoor books want. They want to be there. They want to know what that. They really want to know what that felt like. If we read things like Joe Simpson's Touching the Void, you're right there with him in that crevasse, and that's what I think we should try and achieve through our writing in outdoors. Okay, I'm going to go on a bit. I've gone on quite a bit already, really, haven't I? Not much. Okay, I'm going to have to. Where are we now? Okay, right. I'm gonna. Right, okay, I'm going to cut this a little bit. I'm running out of time a little bit. I don't want to go on over half an hour. You've been patient enough as it is. Couple of little points. I would say talk about the ordinary. Now that sounds a bit strange, but if you think about it, I talk about walking in bothies. I talk about lighting the stove. I talk about the wind underneath the door, that sort of stuff. To people who go to bothies all the time, that's kind of commonplace. But you've got to remember, if you're writing about the outdoors, that most of the people you're writing for will not have experienced that. So actually what is normal, what is commonplace to you, actually creates the background. So it's you need to be selective about what you do, but it also creates texture and it creates colour if you talk about the difficulty you had lighting the stove, the kind of stoves you use. That's another minor point actually, is that people really like reading about gear. So if you're into gear, write about it because they love it. Okay, I'm gonna say a few. I've already gone on further than I expected, so I'll talk. This is another little point really. I think it's a really good idea, if you can, is to work and share your work with other people. There's a number of ways you can do this. You can join writers groups, there's writers groups on the internet these days. These can be very good. But the most important thing for me is that if you write something, I'll use this piece of paper as an example of something I've written, and you put it in a drawer, that's it, it's dead. You have to take it out and show it to people. And what I would say is that as a writer, you have to be able to work with people who are critical of your work. I know what I've just written and what I've just prepared is not my soul. It's just a little talk I've done. I compare a piece of writing a little bit to, I used to do joinery, and to a table I've made. And if someone says to me, that joint's not very tight, I don't take that as criticism of my existence. I just go away and I fix it. And that to me, that's how you need to treat writing. You need to say, okay, some of what people say will be fair, some of what it won't be. Don't let it get under your skin. Go away and see if you can write better next time. There are, in my opinion, only two types. You will get people who criticise your work, and actually that's very healthy. You need people to say, this doesn't work. I work with an editor. I've worked with a couple of editors who say, well, I'm not sure what you're trying to say here. This bit doesn't work, or you'll need a little bit more description in here. I'm not quite seeing this. I can't see that. So you're right with somebody else. There are only, in my opinion, two types of critics. You will get critics. There's two types of critics. Number one, some critics are really good and helpful, and some, to be honest, are bastards. So basically what you do If you want to find out whether this critic is telling you something which is worth listening to, what I suggest you do is ask them a question. If you're saying there's something wrong with this, how do I fix it? A good critic will be able to tell you how to fix it. A bad critic won't. If they can't tell you how to fix it, ignore them. They don't know what they're talking about. If someone tells you how to fix it, go away and fix it. Simple as that. That joint wasn't tight enough, go and tighten it up. Okay. The other thing I would say is if you're wanting to develop your writing, it's really useful to write a blog. You have to write a blog regularly, but a great thing that I was told years and years ago when I first got into writing, oh, you need to write a blog. And that has been really useful to me. And the reason it's been useful is it's made me write. I don't write it much these days. I tend to do audio blogs, but when I was doing those kind of blogs, I had to write regularly. And you get a feel for your audience because you see your reader numbers go up and down, and you think, oh, they like that. They didn't like that. Okay. And then people start talking to you. I really like this bit. What did you mean there? That sort of stuff. And that is because, remember, you're a writer. You're trying to write about the outdoors in this audience to talk to you. And that's one of the great things that we have through the internet these days. I have people talk to me all the time. Most of them are pretty nice. Some of them are not. Okay. Sorry, it's flashing me up messages telling me stop talking such rubbish. Okay, that's me going on for 34 minutes now. I think that's more than enough. So what I've talked about, just to say again, paraphrase it really, remember that you're talking about the relationship between you and the environment or the world that you're walking through. Think about your structure. Don't start at the beginning. Try and hook your readers in. Try and give them some tension. Make them wonder what's going to happen. When you're talking about your landscape, all these things popping up, sorry. When you're talking about the landscape is a character. Give it a history, give it colour, if you can, give it a mood. Make your readers feel that they're in the story. Make them feel how cold it is. Make them feel how rough the rock is. Make them feel the wind on their face or whatever. And, oh, okay, I'm going to... No, I won't say that. I was going to say be very, very careful about using humour because it can bite you in the arse. I'll be very careful about that. Okay, I think that's enough from me. Oh, thank you the same. Oh, Jeff's still here. Hello, Jeff. Well done, mate. And Fiona's saying, oh, the humour in your books always comes through. Thank you very much, Fiona. Is it hard to find the bothy in Sandwood Bay? That's cheating. I'm not. You'll have to ask me that offline. Depends how well you can navigate, I suppose, doesn't it? Anybody got any specific questions? You can message me afterwards, or you can talk to me on here. What I would say about questions in any seminar like this really is, if you're sitting on a question and you think this is a really stupid question, I can't answer it. Everyone will think I'm an idiot. That is the question to answer, because to be quite honest, everybody's thinking it, but they daren't ask it. So if there's anything you want to ask me, please feel free. I don't know whether anyone's going to come through or ask a question right now. I think I've talked long enough. I hope that was helpful to you. Doesn't look like anyone's going to ask a question. So, oh, hang on. Apart from Sandwood Bay, is it hard to find them? Yes, it is. Depends how well you can navigate. Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a second. If anyone's asked a question, feel free to come back at me afterwards. It's quite difficult in a situation like this. So I hope that was useful to you. I hope I've been able to tell you some things about writing. It's a journey for all of us. So as I'm not getting any serious questions, I don't think so. Okay, I think I'll call it a day at that. Thanks very much for watching. I do hope that's been useful to you. Do talk to me. Do come and ask me. And I'll do my best to answer any queries you've got. And I think I'm absolutely knackered right now. Okay, thanks very much. Really nice talking to you. And thank you for your time. Bye-bye then. Bye.